genuine expert, Yan Lin, who I'm sure many of you know is our head of Medtech for APAC. She'll be joined by our panelists, Dr. Lin Lin, Langston Swin, and Alan Go, if the three of you would like to come on.
Thank you, everybody. So again, to introduce myself, my name is Yan Lin. I'm head of Medtech here in APAC, and I'll be moderating both panel sessions this evening. So we are starting off with the startup panel, and we're very privileged tonight to have the past 3 winners of the Medtech Innovator Program. And we obviously, they've spanned it from the first year that MTI was in APAC until most present, Dr. Lin. And so they're all at different stages of growth, company-wise, but also all have very different backgrounds in how they became entrepreneurs in this space. So maybe just to kick things off, I would like to have each of you give your 1-minute pitch to talk about basically what your company is doing so we can set the scene, right? And then we can get into some other questions. Would you like to get started first?
Yeah,
Thanks.
sure. Good evening, everyone. Pleasure to be here. I'm Langston, founder and CEO of Ophthalmic. My company is an ultrasound platform technology company that we aim to harness the power of ultrasound for a great variety of biomedical applications. So one of the most advanced pipeline they're working on is on the drug delivery to the eye. And we are also working with pharma companies on other applications, for example, on regenerative medicine and other skincare related business. Our primary business model is on a licensing model because we see that to help pharma company partners win and to create greater impacts, we as an enabling partner that we will be customizing our technologies to suit their business and technical needs.
Wonderful. Alan.
Hi, I'm Malungo, CEO and co-founder of NDR Medical. So we develop interventional robotic system that's image guided. We have some AI to help you detect lesions within the body. We map out the whole lung space and spine and many other areas to help doctors do a percutaneous access, meaning putting a needle with precision into the body, either for the purpose of biopsy, ablation, or any form of needle procedures. So far, the company has been around for more than 8+ years. We have gotten FDA approval, CE, HSA. Right now, we are at the stage of commercializing our product, and there's a lot more development ongoing as well. If anybody is interested to understand a little bit more, feel free to contact me.
Excellent. Dr. Lin.
Hi, I'm Lin, and I'm a ear, nose, throat surgeon practicing for 25 years now, so you can guess my age. And I'm a founder at NewSkill, which is a Singapore startup, 2 years old. And our first focus is actually on middle ear effusion, which is gummy ears, fluid behind the eardrum in little kids. And so this is actually the most common reason why a child needs surgery under general anesthesia. So when medications fail, surgeons put this tiny 1 millimeter tube onto the eardrum to drain the fluid, but now it needs 7 different instruments, operating theater, general anesthesia, surgical microscope. So because of this, only 18 million patients are getting treated, another 100 million not treated. So we have the world's first robotic handheld device with just 1 click of a button, able to put this tube in, removing the operating theater just in the clinic, do under local anesthesia, and now many more patients can be helped. Raising Series A funds now, another 2.5 million needed to complete this round. Very exciting milestones next year, starting clinical trials, pivotal trials in America, and then going for FDA clearance in 2025. Please talk to me. Thank you.
Wonderful. We have many investors, I think, in the room so hopefully you'll have lots of interest. So each of the panelists up here have actually really different backgrounds. Obviously, Dr. Lin is a practicing surgeon. You were actually on the other side of the table for one, Alan. You were on the investor side for a little while, right? And then Langston, you came more from the academic side of things. So my first question of the evening is, when you first started fundraising, so you formed a company and you had to fundraise, what was the thing that shocked you the most culturally in that process, right? And you wish somebody told you about that before you started pitching. Alan, maybe you've been at this the longest, so maybe let us know.
Yes, you are right. In a sense, before starting NDR Medical, I was with this company, very small outfit called AIT Ventures, and I know David Brother many years back when I was still with the firm. So we do look out for small, early stage founders from the academic side and support them to fundraise. So we do have the experience. But in terms of my own experience so far, I think there's always things to learn. You can never expect, because every single investors are looking for different things, from early stage all the way to the Series B, which we are raising right now. Some of the requirements to me are pretty similar. Even at the very early stage when I do my seed round, people are already looking for financial projection. What is your 10 years return? How many units you're going to sell in the next 5 to 10 years? To me, it's a bit strange, especially when we are developing deep tech. You don't expect to generate any revenue until you reach or pass your POV and you get your product registered, which is at least 5 to 6 years down the road. But when we are fundraising our first round, typically we have to get that prepared. So in a sense, 5 years to get some traction for sales, project another 10 years, literally I need to do a sum of 15 years projection for the investors. So these are some of the early sharing that probably I could have that shocked me, that I didn't expect them to expect so much in terms of their financials return.
Yeah. How about you, Langston?
So I would say, because my company start off by focusing on eye care drug delivery, and as you can imagine, it's not a pure medical device, and it's not a pure pharmaceuticals. So that could be very confusing to experienced investors, because they used to look at cases, biologics or therapeutics development, or very traditional medical device journey. And our company, or at least our first product, we don't fall into these two categories. So actually, we have quite a hard time to find the right group of investors who understands the true potential of a delivery system, how we can enable the pharma companies to really create greater impacts. And obviously, that is something that I wish I would know better if I start off again, going back in time, to really speak to the right investors who understands something that's not very commonly seen. I can give you an example. Even, for example, in the FDA, we don't have a predicate because there's nothing like that in the market yet. So that speaks the unique challenges that my business is facing, hence also having the need to find the right investors who understands the game plan of that.
Dr. Lin.
Because we are only about 2 years old, so I think I started raising funds about a year ago, and then I got into this really bad time this year, very difficult fundraise here. But I wanted to start early, right? And I thought investors would be nice, they would be patient, but some remembered me from 1 year ago when I hadn't done that much, and then it wasn't so good. So, but we have, I think the thing is that in 1 year, actually, for a startup, we can progress very fast. So the 1 year ago startup is very different from a year later, the startup. I think that a lot of startups underestimate the time that's needed, and a lot of time is needed really to build relationships. So I had a hard time because initially I couldn't find a lot of medical device investors that were interested in devices and like to do the due diligence for them here. And so I tried to reach out to America, and it's hard to cold call. Right, it's really hard to cold call. I've been to America 3 times this year, and still it's not enough. The relationships take time to build, and so now I've accepted that the relationships I started building last year is going to come in handy only, maybe Series B. Yeah. So I think the mismatch really is that we expect things to happen real fast, but I think relationships need time to build. The second point I want to make, maybe because I'm a ear, nose, throat surgeon, is really a lot of investors usually make, let's say they ask about an ENT device, and then they will ask 1 or 2 key opinion leaders, right? And they could be maybe just a key opinion leader in this country. But when you're doing something global, really what I would like the investors to consider really is that the key opinion leaders should not be so narrow. And I've been a professor, I've been a researcher, I've been the vice dean at the medical faculty, and I'll tell you, a lot of key opinion leaders are not the best key opinion leaders to ask for an innovation. I have been there myself, so I dare to say this, if not, I'm going to be killed. Yeah. So I think it's important to find the right key opinion leaders. And for myself, I don't trust myself even, so I have spoken individually to hundreds of ENTs from different countries, as far as Africa, into China, into US. And I think that's important. So I ask that you ask a bit more different kinds of KOLs. Thank you.
I think we picked up on a number of things there, but maybe the first thing that you mentioned about deciding who to pitch to. I think Lanston, you mentioned it. When you first started, who did you try to pitch to versus who did you end up pitching to? How was that journey that made you realize how to target your efforts a bit better? Lanston, you sort of touched on it. Maybe you'd like to go.
So my company was founded in 2017, and up till now we have 3 rounds of equity financing. And the first round, I would say, is really, I'm coming from academic background, so I would describe that as more like a trial and error process for a start. So we are based in Hong Kong, so that's why the first wave, we just really approach investors who, at least on website or through face-to-face meetings, that they claim they are like healthcare investors. And we thought like healthcare equals, they would know what we are doing. So we have some in-depth discussions, start exchanging materials. And then throughout the dialogues or throughout the due diligence process, when they start asking questions, so when you're going to get an FDA approval? So how's your device manufacturing strategy? So what's the reimbursement plan? Then, obviously I understand at that point, this is a very important questions that we need to ask, because from an investor standpoint, if you're able to articulate this, then somehow you demonstrate the thought process and the strategies that you have to start de-risking. But when I look back to my business and also the key technology that we have on hand, then I kind of get a gut feel that this is not entirely right. Because as a delivery system, we are not like the traditional, say, catheters or even other pacemakers, that the device itself have the primary mode of action. I apologize for this jargon because I'm sure most of us are coming from the Medtech background. Then therefore, but for us, we're just an assistive tool, frankly speaking. So that's why in the early days, even though I speak to appear to be the healthcare investors, but there's a lot of wrestling process, try to get them to understand what we're trying to do, try to get to understand why we are not kind of, pursuing FDA clearance since day one, but we have to spend time to really speak to doctors, speak to pharma companies. Obviously, there are some hiccups, ups and downs, but eventually we soldier through. But yeah, in general, we thought we were speaking to the right group of investors, but obviously it took a lot of time for us to ultimately find the right match. So for first round, ultimately, and at the end, we get family offices supporting us. We also got individual angel investors whom himself got eye disease. And he told me, when your system gets into the trial, I want to be one of the volunteers to test on that. And we also got early stage seed level VCs writing the checks to us as our seed round back in the end of 2017. So that was quite a ride to us.
So Alan, I think you've gone through more rounds. And so what did you do in the early days? And I think we've known each other a long time. So what do you do? What would you have done differently? Because now you're very experienced at this, but what would you have done differently in the early days?
I guess during the early stage, for the lack of better words, beggars are no chooser. We literally just pitch to anyone we see in the market. And as what Langston has mentioned, it's a lot of investor education process, because we are developing something deep tech. And I would seriously find that most of the investors who, even in the healthcare sector, may not understand exactly how this new device is going to work, or how is it going to help the patient or help the hospital. Likewise, so a lot of time is spent in that, but fortunately we're still able to get some angels as well as government support like SG Innovate, Enterprise Singapore, to support in our early journey. If I were to give my early self an advice, is to venture abroad as soon as possible. Even though we did, from a clinical trial perspective, from a clinician perspective, we went overseas because of certain issue that we faced locally. We went to China, we went to Japan, we went to Korea, we went to many other countries to look for key opinion leaders that is willing to support our level of development. But from an investor perspective, I spent too much time locally. I find that just like what Dr. Lin has mentioned, probably a better option would to venture abroad. Look at specifically where are the investors who are investing in the healthcare or medtech space, going through the list of their past investment. That probably would help a lot. Even though at the early stage, no harm engaging and trying to strike off an early conversation, and they might be ready for your series A, B, C, and fast forward. So I guess always have the conversation early is good, not limiting ourselves to just looking for someone within our region.
Go ahead.
Yeah, so I have the least experience of them all, and I think I tried to get recommendations because I always thought it's better than a cold call, and then I would try that, but we also had lists that we would look through ourselves, do our own homework, and I tried to do that. What will I? I'm still learning, so I've actually never found a conversation with an investor that I didn't learn anything from. So I'm always grateful. You know, even if I get rejected, I'm grateful. I learned something, and nowadays I don't really go into those presentations always thinking about money. You know, I think about it as a relationship, and so that has worked better. So a lot of times I go in now asking for advice, and then it's strange when I ask for advice, they want to invest. When I ask them to invest, they don't want to give me money. Yeah, so I think I'm still learning, so I'll maybe be able to update better next time. Thank you.
Thank you so much for those insights. I suppose following up on that, has your pitch style changed over time? So as you were alluding to there, you know, at first you probably were focusing on certain things, and now you have changed. So maybe would you like to clarify a little bit? Now, what do you focus on when you pitch?
No, I think I try to see whether the investor is interested. I mean, if he's not interested, I don't want to try and kill him with my pitch. So I think really I'm hoping to, it's a two-way thing, right? I mean, we never know when we could meet again. It's a long journey, yeah.
How about you, Alan? Anything that you changed in how you pitch?
I think these days we focus a lot more on building relationship and making friends than just straight away, this is what I need. Can you provide me whatever I'm looking for? I think that is the approach that I will be taking from now onwards. But like you mentioned, different investors, different clinicians are looking for really different things. The good thing is we have been around for many years and have spoke to a lot of investors. Typically right now, I don't have a standard deck that I use, but more to cater to whichever investor that I spoke to, whether they do early stage investment or they are much late stage. Likewise, for all investors, they are only looking for typical things. Approval, even though early stage, they are looking for approval, they are looking for market traction, so you can't run away from this typical question. And of course, the intensity of them drilling down some of these numbers, depending on what kind of investors they are. Of course, these days, I find that a lot more venture capital or PE firms, they hire a lot more academic individual or founders who have exited their company before. So definitely they have some experience in running startups, which is good in our space, as compared to in the past, used to be a lot of bankers, whereby they don't really care about the tech. They just want numbers, which is very difficult for deep tech startup, especially in the medical space.
Anything you would like to add?
Well, just a very short note. I definitely echo what Dr. Lin and also Alan said. I think the pitch-wise, from the company perspective, the changes that we have is more about how we articulate our business and also to showcase the impact that we aim to create in the biotech areas that we're focusing on. But in terms of the conversation with investors, existing investors or potential investors that we try to engage, now pretty much my approach is more to also understand investors' interest. You know, is it like an evergreen fund? Is it like a very traditional VC funds with certain period of maturity? Are they at the early phase of deployment or really at the later stage of deployment? What sort of exits they typically prefer? What are the closest similar portfolios they have seen or come across or even invest? So try to get a sense of expectation first. And again, I think this is a very meaningful panel, because the way that I now see investors and startups not necessarily have to be like opposing force. So startup is more like a channel, or companies are more like a channel to also help investors win. So the more you understand their agenda, the more understand their considerations, then it will be easier for you to find a pain point and therefore decide from a company perspective whether you want to spend more time to go deeper in your discussion, share more proprietary information, the due diligence process, so on and so forth. So that's how I realized that this approach has been changed over time.
So what are the characteristics of a good VC for you? Like, it can be deal type, but I think I'm more interested to sort of talk more about how they work with you as a company, because I've seen all sorts. I've seen very hands-off investors. I've seen very entrenched investors. So from the startup perspective, what level of engagement is the right level of engagement for you? And I appreciate it could be different for everybody. So maybe you'd like to comment?
Thank you. I would say it really depends on the stages of development. In the earlier stage of developments where, as a really green company, very resource restrained, then obviously the capital support from the first ticket that you get is very important. And also that depends the team structure and how clear the founding team are to the company's vision and the strategy forward. If that is still something is more like an exploration stage, then I would say it's good to have VCs or investors in general that might be more hands-on, so you can really leverage their prior experience and exposure to give you pointers. I mean, no one have fought the battle that you are going to fight with your own company, but their experience and especially the failure cases that investors have seen can definitely give you a timely heads up and maybe also give you a good pause and sanity check to make sure that before you execute a certain strategy, you might have already heard some good or bad stories from the supporters that's on your side. Then that would be a very good mix. And moving forward, I think able to give you meaningful connections based on the business need will be something also very powerful. I think investors are always there to help, but they don't know how to help it because you are the one at the front line. You know what sort of battles or what sort of challenges or opportunities that you're facing. So those that when you speak to and when you start working with, you feel they have some other synergistic resources that's at their convenience to be able to make connections or to introduce you to someone locally or abroad. Then I think that will be helpful for midterm growth. So that's how I currently structuring our current investor base as well. I think that has been quite rewarding in terms of how to guide a company growth, especially surviving through the COVID times.
How about you, Alan?
Yeah, like I just now mentioned, most of the investors wouldn't really comprehend or understand fully, deeply what we are developing. Good that if let's say investors have existing portfolio, have founders who have exited before, there's supporting, they will understand the situation in the company based on the different stages that we are going through a lot better. Likewise, our 100 investor I can share, less than five really strike a chord. And when that happens, it's very powerful. Literally, even before answering your question, the person who understand your type, understand where you are looking for and understand where you are headed towards, already answer the question on your behalf, and they really love the technology. And for me, a good conversation with a venture capital is not about debating, fighting, argument, like what is a better KPI for the company or what are the outcomes or milestones that we are trying to deliver, but it's more like the synergy. They really understand some of the pitfall that might come our way. When we start asking for help, I find that it's already a little too late. If it's good, we can find venture capital who really understand the tech. But of course, it's not possible for most venture capital to have a wide verse of expertise in every single area. So technically, I prefer venture capital who are focused in terms of their funds and what they invest in. When they have a very specific thesis, that is the best. I spoke to a couple of PE. PE firms tend to be a little bit more focused, whether they are in healthcare or whether they are in specific areas. Venture capital in the early stage tend to be a little bit more generic. Venture capital in the early stage tend to have a spray and pray approach, which is technically not my preference. But like I mentioned, in the early stage when we are looking for funds, we speak to anyone and any friends that we can reach out to through networking, through words of mouth. And if let's say there's some synergy, we will still be able to strike a good conversation after which.
How about you, Lynn? Any words of wisdom or deal breakers?
No. So I think because I'm at this early stage, I really do not. I'm not even must have an investor who is have done. Very few people have done the ENT Medtech device. So I don't think I'm going to find anybody. I'm really looking for somebody who believes in the founder and the team, and will work together with us to deliver on things. I believe a partnership is very powerful, and I don't believe you need previous history or anything to do something magic together. So I remember how I voted for France in the 2018 World Cup finals. They were playing terrible games, terrible games and all that, and losing, and but somehow at the very end, they always managed to win the crucial things. So I think if you click with the founder, if you click with the team, let them have the reins and work together, and I think you can do something nice.
And just add on to that, I think as a founder, the three of us are, plus venture capital, a lot of times it's a leap of faith. You never know where this will end up in. But if we all believe in a single vision, more investors coming together, ecosystem that we are building. Thankful for Cambridge Consultant who is trying to build this ecosystem for the longest period. We are seeing a lot more traction, a lot more early stage investors, more people coming together. I think we can make a lot of things happen. Just like for myself, I actively reach out to fellow founders, trying to make friends, trying to get connection. If I have investors that I think is suitable for them, I will recommend it to them. Likewise, I will reach out to see whether they have recently met with anyone interesting that might be interested in my technology.
So I think anecdotally, I've been in the Singapore ecosystem, well over 10 years, and I've seen it grow. But I was just share in the early days when I was talking to VCs, most of the VCs back then had zero medtech anything in their portfolio. And some of the common statements I would get is, what's the ROI in 5 years, right, for a deep tech startup? And it was almost a non-starter conversation, I would say. Now I think investors in the region in Singapore are increasingly sophisticated, but I wanted to sort of ask, have you guys encountered any sort of deal breaker statements like that recently? And maybe you can share why they are deal breakers for you, or why it makes it challenging for a startup to really pursue those kind of conversations in that way. Yeah.
I can start because I just got asked. So I've been pitching to some U.S. investors, and it's very interesting. For U.S. and for I think this region, and when you pitch to China, it's really different. So the U.S. investor would want usually, I don't know whether there are U.S. investors here, but they would want at the first pitch a very clear slide that says how much you're asking for, how much equity that would translate to, and how much the valuation is, and what is the ROI in 2 years' time and in 5 years' time. Yeah. So if you don't have that slide prepared, you can pitch, but you're likely to fail that checklist. Yeah. So I think initially I thought that was crazy, right? But I actually went back and I did a lot of work, and I think that's good because it pushed me to actually do better. So we actually look deeper into things, but it was, as you said, it was impossible because I'm only 2 years old, and you're telling me do something at 5 years. Tell me your whole commercialization plan. Tell me reimbursement. How much are you going to sell? Reimbursement is different in even different states of America. Sometimes the questions are not are sometimes not fair. But the thing is, I think it made the company grow stronger, and I like the opportunities that push us to do all that. So I think through all this difficult pitches, we have a better pitch. Yeah.
Any other comments? So in terms of, well, I know we are running low on time here. I'm trying to keep us moving along. So I just kind of want to leave the last question out for sort of you guys to share your experience on any kind of mismatched expectations you might have that sort of clarify over time. I think you shared one very powerful example then about, the expectation of what's supposed to be in the pitch. But in terms of, let's say, you're already working with investor, you're already a team, are there mismatched expectations even in trying to hit certain milestones or even in how you allocate funds that you already have brought in? So any stories like that, if you're willing to share, I'm sure the audience will be grateful.
Yeah, this part I think because I've raised more rounds, so I'm a bit more familiar. The investment landscape is not as if once they agreed they will put money in directly. There's still a period of due diligence, setting milestones, doing all the agreements. Typical investment timeline, 3 to 4 months. I think the earliest I've seen maybe 2 months. But likewise, whenever the KPIs was being set, I realized that from my journey in the fundraising cycle, by the time we close that round, I already met some of the KPIs. It's a bit strange. Unlike, I think, for US counterparts, some of the startups, there's very clear definition in terms of seed round, what you're supposed to deliver, Series A, Series B, Series C. You can read a lot of books. There are very specific guidelines in terms of what we are looking for. But in our stage, weirdly, like I mentioned, even in the early stage, investors are already looking for ROI. Hence, even before getting investment, even getting the capital to drive it to the next stage, we are compelled as a startup to use the least resource, whatever resource that is on hand, to push the boundaries of what we are trying to do. So most of the time, even till now, I'm trying to raise my Series B. In a deep tech surgical robotics, no one in the world, or even in China or even in the US, nobody will expect you to turn revenue. But somehow in this current landscape, most of the investors are telling me, if you don't have revenue, nobody wants to talk to you. In the past, it used to be, if you don't have 510K, nobody wants to talk to you. So the milestone or the difficulty in trying to strike a conversation with like-minded investors just get a lot harder because I guess everybody is looking for ROI. If you don't generate revenue, it's not sales, it's not adopted, they wouldn't want to talk to you. At this current stage, I'm not sure whether it's going to change in near time, but bearing in mind, Medtech, deep tech, the gestation period is at least 4 to 5 years. It's already pretty extreme, very fast. The typical timeline, I think, will be a lot longer.
Thanks. So you have a combination device, which is a completely different revenue model, completely different. So how has it been for you trying to set expectation and set milestones that make sense for investors?
Wow, that has been a tough assignment that I've been taking on since we closed the first financing round. Frankly, I think I've taken an approach that an honest conversation and also try to manage the expectation of investors has been on my top priority because as a combination product, as Yanin put it, especially the device part, which is where our platform technology contributes, are more of an assistive feature, meaning we are just assisting the drugs. So we are not even contributing to the primary mode of action to, say, generate certain clinical benefits. So this is something that's very new to investors because a drug or therapeutic devices is a very clear definition to everything. Regulatory roadmaps, the product development plan, the subsequent, say, quality control plan, a lot of things that would naturally fall in place. And I'm telling investors that all these checkpoints are no longer entirely relevant to our case. So that's to be honest, a shock to our existing investors, also to new investors as well. And for example, I also come across some investors that when we start pitching to them, when they keep drilling on us and say, when do you expect to get your first FDA approval? And the deeper that they drill in, then they start realizing, oh, so as an assistive device, then that means you don't have a full autonomy to determine whether your device will be entering into the trial or not. You'll be depending on the partners. And it turns out that somehow became a deal breaker to that particular investor group. So then that's kind of all these little accidents or this little episodes that I came across then helped me to rethink, how to really articulate the situation and the potential that we are facing in a way that's able to create positive resonance to investors. So that part, then we start going back to drawing board and really see, from a business strategy or model perspective, how can we speak a similar language that investors will understand and therefore help them to adjust the milestones accordingly. So one thing that we did differently is that during COVID times, because especially we're based in Hong Kong, unfortunately we are in a lockdown for 3 years. But that gave us a very good timing for us to rethink how to move forward with such a unique product concept. So instead of going through a very traditional device development roadmap, then we now pretty much are working what we call a licensing model, like a tech company, like a software company. We provide the rights to use the rights to access of our tech to our pharma partners based on the indications, based on the drug content, drug type, and based on the territory. And from there, we reverse the risk by having, say, earning the upfront payment, the milestones payment, and then hopefully, with everything goes smoothly, then we'll get the royalty, depends on the agreed digits. And this became the backbone of the milestones or the KPIs that we present to investors. And we are able to excel on that because now we do have partnerships in place with some of the largest pharma companies in the world on our delivery applications and also on the cell regenerative medicine applications. So with these commercial endorsements, then I'm able to backfill investors and say, hey, I know we are trying something new, but look at the tractions that we have. We now have commercial partners paying monies to evaluate our tech and also securing rights for, say, a first right of license or first right negotiate, so on and so forth. So that, in that sense, that we are helping investors to answer the questions themselves, which they don't have answers beforehand. So we are trying to make things easier to that. So I think there's no black and white answers to that. I have to go with the flow, but based on the change in terms of the market landscape and also the company growth, I was able to, in time, switch the market the market strategy and our business strategy in a way that timely articulate the concerns that investors would have or already have, and also to apologize for my language, shut them up by delivering the performances to show them that we can do this. Please trust me. So there's a lot of wrestling. Obviously, it's not easy because investors they also have their own KPIs and timeline they have to report to their LPs as well. But this is what business is. So I think we managed to put it through. So a lot of things still ahead of our way. We have to achieve that. But so far, I think we managed to turn things around. And hopefully that answers the questions that Yan Lin just raised.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. So actually, we are at the end of time for the startup panel. So please thank our three wonderful panelists for joining us, sharing their insights